Okay, so I think it should be recording now. All right. So, all right, let's get started with this week's lecture. Okay. So, this week actually what we're going to be talking about is wireframe. Okay. So, in the last couple of weeks, what we did was we looked into sitemaps, right? Um, we looked into sitemaps. Basically, a sitemap, for example, such as this, is after going through all the requirements with our client, we identify what is their needs and what is the content and information that is required in their website. Uh, we organize them into a sitemap, and this process is called the information architecture. Okay, but a sitemap is to do with the whole website, right? The content of the whole website. But when we come to a wireframe, okay, um, wireframes are essentially the organization of information as well, uh, but for a page. Okay, so we are talking about a layout of a page. So for example, if I were to Google wireframe, okay, and I will go to images, and you can see these are examples of wireframe. And wireframe is to do with how you organize information as well, visually, but on a page, right? On a web page. So this is a wireframe for a web page. This is a wireframe for a web page, etc., etc. Okay, this is a digital wireframe for an app. Okay, so it is also to do with how you organize information, but on a page. Okay. Now, but before we go into actually doing the wireframe, okay, what I'm going to do is to actually run through a lecture with you, a short lecture, okay, called Designing on a Grid. And we'll design on a grid, okay, and this is to give you some uh, context into how we use grids when we do layout for web pages, okay. All right, so see, all right, so now when it comes to website, okay, there is a common practice, but this is not compulsory, all right, uh, or there is a common practice of using what we call a 12 column grid. Okay, 12 column grid means to say, if you were to look at this web page sample here, if you calculate the amount of columns, okay, you will come up to 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? So 12 column grid. And the content of the web page, all right, is organized accordingly lah, to this grid, right? So if you remember last week when we talked about breaking rules, right? If we don't have a rule, we can't break it, right? So we need to have a grid, or in this case, a 12 column grid, right? In order for us to align our content to this grid, and as well, if we want to break out of the grid to add some visual interest, okay? But just remember, generally there are common practice of 12 grids as a 12 column grid, or some will use 8 or some will use 16, okay, depending on the designer or the company, but the common one is a 12 column grid, okay. Now the yellow lines that you see here are called gutters, okay. Gutters in Malay means longkang, right? Or in English, another word for gutter is the drain, right? Or if you go bowling, right, the two alley or the two sort of drain next to the in the lane is called the gutter, right? So when you throw and you fail, your ball falls in the gutter. That's what you mean. So the gutter is the space between the column, right? So the purple ones are the column, and we have 12 of them. Gutter is the yellow one, all right? Now, when we talk about columns, all right, is the is the vertical uh, boxes, okay, or the vertical, literally the vertical column lah, okay. So for example, this, is one column because they've been together, right? This is another column. This is another column, right? And this here we have three column. Of course, this three column is formed by multiple grids lah. So for example, this box here is formed by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 grid. This is formed by 1, 2, 3 grid. Okay, so this is 6 grid column, 3 grid column, 3 grid column, and this one in this case will be 4 grid column because 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. A little bit of mathematics, 3 times 4 is 12, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And for the vertical, for the horizontal row, the horizontal direction, we call it as rows. Okay, so this one row, is 2 rows. Okay, simple. So column is a vertical, rows is the horizontal. Okay. Now I'm going to show you some samples of how this 12 grid grid can be flexible, right, into creating different layouts. So for example, this is a 12 grid but 4 column website. Okay, so for example, this 1, 2, 3, 4 means to say each column is 3 grid because 12 divided by 4 is 3. So this is 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, right? So you can follow the grid, right? And you can create some very visually pleasing layouts as well. Okay, so 12 grid 4 column, for example. This is also another example of a 12 grid 4 column because actually we do say 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 3 times 4 creates the 4 column grid, 12 column. Okay, sorry. So this is actually 3 grid, 3 grid, 3 grid, 3 grid, forming the 4 column. Okay, total 12. Now you have this one which span across 6, right? Because if you see, if you have 1, 2, 3 here, 1, 2, 3, so this will be 6. Okay, so your box or can actually span across the grid numbers to create some visually interesting layout lah. Okay, for example, this as well. Okay, so you see here, this one actually, if you want to say that this is stretch the whole row, what's new at exit from the block, stretch the whole row, and then they use these columns here to organize the information, right? So this is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. An example. Okay, so you can actually use the grid to split up the columns. Now this is an example of 12 with 3 column. Okay, so again, this one spreads across 2 columns with a total of 8 grid, right? Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you have another balance 1, 2, 3, 4 here, forming the 12 grids. So by splitting it up like this, right, you can create a main banner, for example, or main article page image, and then with your sidebar. Okay, so this is a 12 with 3 column example. Another example for 12 with 3 column. Right, so obviously you will use the grid in a way that it spans across the columns to make it interesting. All right, so for example, this one, right? So this one follows the column, and then you have one box here that spans across the 2 columns, right? With a total of 8 grid. This one will have 4 grid and 8 grid spanning across, yeah? Okay, now this one is a 6 column grid, right? It's 12 with 6 column. So you can see the columns are much more narrower, right? But the visual still works, right? So for example, we have this banner here that spreads across all 12 grids, spreads across all 6 columns. So means to say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 11, 12, right? Because it spreads across. And this one, it doesn't. This layout utilizes a 6 column and follows a 6 column. So 1, 2, 1 column, 1, 2 grid, 1 column, 1, 2 grid, 1 column, right? And repeatedly. So you can fit a series of articles in this 12 grid, 6 column layout. Okay. Now you can go a bit more interesting. You can mix column, right? So for example, this row here, we have a 2 column, and each column is 6 grid, right? And the second row, we have 3 columns, and each column has 4 grids. And the last row has 4 columns, and each column have 3 grids. Okay, so that is how you can use the grid to create a layout. Obviously, when you align it to the grid like this, it is rather structured, right? It looks quite visually structured. It's visually pleasing, but it can be look very structured, right? So if you want to break up the grids, right, you have to, in a way, find ways to maybe not follow the grid so tightly, okay? But do remember, when it comes to coding, having structure is better. Okay, so the more complicated your layout, the more difficult it's going to be to code it out. All right. So for example, this one, right, this is also a mixed column layout. So for example, we have 3 columns here, each column will be 4 grids. We have 6 columns here, each column will be 2 grids. We have 2 columns here, each column here will be 6 grids, right? Okay. All right. So as I said, we are moving on to the wireframe, right? So I've given you some example of layouts on designing on a grid. So when you work on your wireframe as well, you need to design it on a grid, which we will do later. Okay, I will show you how to do the grid on Figma and do the wireframe, the process of it. Okay, now a wireframe, like I said, it allows you to work through navigating your website, right? So for example, once you have a sitemap, right, the big picture, now you are using the smaller picture, each page layout, each page, how information is being arranged on the web page, right? And like I said, we design it on a grid. Okay? So for example, these are sketches of wireframe, which I also want you guys to do at the end of this assignment, at the end of this lecture as your attendance. Okay, so I want you to do is to sketch out some layout for your website. Obviously, you can use inspiration based from your visual references that you've done. Okay, and I want you to sketch it on paper, pen and paper, or you can do it on your iPad and your Pencil Pro. Okay, now, for example, these are what we call low-fi or low fidelity websites. Sorry, low fidelity wireframe. Okay, particularly this one here, right? Because it doesn't really has very actually it's quite kind of detailed already, right? It's actually kind of detailed. So you can see here, right, where they are putting the logo, where they are putting the photo, where they are putting the social media, right? All these are sketches on the wireframe for a particular site. Now this is definitely more sorry, this one is more sketch-like, right? It's more free. Okay. And this is definitely more structured because again they use the mathematical grade paper, right? And they really draw quite high fidelity on the banner, the logo, you know, even some details of the pictures that they're going to use, right? Like by the scores, you know, where the article is going to be, where the sidebar is going to be. And the key thing that I want from a wireframe is the label, all right? You have to really, really label it very well so that we know what box is what, right? We don't want it just to be an empty box with some weird, you know, rectangles that we don't know what is it. That doesn't serve the purpose of a wireframe because again, the wireframe is not just about how nice the layout looks. It's also how you organize information in a page. So how do you organize information in a page if you don't label and if you don't know what information is being put on, right? So for example, it really clearly states here logo with light white halo, right? It's actually really detailed. Okay, blog post here or featured investment, right? RSS feed, search function, privacy or disclaimer link, copyright info, intro to Coastal Capital, partners, and then this is the horizontal navigation. You know, some would go as far as actually labeling what are the pages because you already have your sitemap. You can actually label what are the pages here already. Okay, so this is obviously sketches, even though it's a very detailed one. Okay, you can also do thumbnails like this, which is more exploratory, right? You just want to quickly sketch and see how it goes, right? So get some ideas before you move on to a detailed sketch. Okay, then after that you move on to a digital wireframe. Okay, so this digital wireframe is what you need to submit for your assignment 2, right? But for this lecture, I want you to start with the sketches first, okay? Pencil and pen sketches. But immediately after you have done all the exploration, you have done all the sketches, and idea generation, you would transfer your wireframe to a digital one, right? So if you notice, in this case, this is a digital wireframe, and this digital wireframe is designed upon a 12-grid column. So if you see pink grid behind 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You see 12 grids, right? So this page layout is designed upon the 12 grid. So you see this logo is 3 grid, this search function is 4 grid, this horizontal navigation bar is 12 grid. You have the image banner, which is I think 8 grid and 4, right? Etc. etc. So and you see it's really it's labeled quite well, right? I would say that it can be a bit more detailed here, but we generally see that, okay, this is a search function, this is the logo, this is the navigation. You have a featured banner here, you know, with the image and the banner 1, 2, 3, 4 that you can switch around. And then you have an introduction to the, probably, so that's why this part I think can be done better, because I don't know what is this part, right? We know this is social media, this newsletter sign up, right? But the key thing is label what are the content. Okay, but the practice of digitizing your wireframe is as such, after you have done the sketches, you would actually transfer it to a digital wireframe like this. Okay. All right. So actually that's it for the first part of this lecture, right? So I have gone through with you the different 12-bit columns, right? And the possibilities around it. I've shown you some samples and then what are wireframes, okay? So in the next recording, I will demonstrate with you how I go about creating a wireframe for a web page. Okay, so check on to the next video recording.